But who really knows?
I know.
We don't know.
No, I know.
You were there?
I know what it is.
Well, tell me.
It's a conspiracy.
That's in New York City. And they say that it originates from the World Trade Center.
You're kidding. Like the new one or the old one?
The new one.
Broadcasting from Nashville, Tennessee, offering a glimpse inside the music industry, shedding light on things they don't want you to know, and exposing some of the industry's biggest secrets. You're listening to the Turned Up Podcast, presented by Real Sound Productions. Here are your hosts, Jake Jones.
Anything. You can milk anything with nipples.
And Robert Venable.
I live on top of a skyscraper where Godzilla frequents.
Top of the morning to you, Mr. Venable.
Top of the evening to you, Mr. Jones.
That's weird. You're saying that it's evening, and I'm saying that it's morning. I guess it could be any time when these lovely folks are listening.
We are Misters Worldwide.
Misters Worldwide?
I don't even know what that means.
That's,
I don't think it's Mr. Worldwide.
Mr. and Ma'am, really. I'm the Mr.
I get to be the Mister?
No.
You're the Mister? No, we talked about that right before we got on here, that I would be the Mister.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Not that there's anything wrong with that. Is that 2 weeks? No, we skipped a week.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Well, thank you for listening to the Turned Up Podcast.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Not you.
I listen to every one of them in real time as we are speaking them into the microphones.
That means you get to hear all the really ridiculous things that don't actually make the...
We should make a podcast of just all of the clips that don't make it into the podcast.
You know, I would love to get the listeners' feedback on this. I'm really interested in maybe doing a Patreon and doing completely unedited. Just completely raw mistakes, all the silly, ridiculous things we say, like me getting up to let the dog out.
They're going to hear some things that they're not supposed to hear.
Well,
I mean, that's why we cut them out.
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to get blacklisted for this?
Just, talking about the fake moon landing and stuff. Oh.
Okay, so if you're interested in
Edit that out.
Yeah, if you're interested in hearing anything like that, or even entertaining the idea of hearing some of the outtakes of our podcast, the Turn Up Podcast, please send us a message, and we'll consider it, maybe.
Boy, have we got an episode for you. But before we go any further, I want to tell you a little bit about my best buddy here, Robert Venable, a.k.a.
Let me tell you about my best friend.
People, let me tell you about my best friend. He's a warm
Robert Venable.
Oh, that's exactly how you say it.
That's how you say it in Puerto Rico.
Is it? Though?
Venable.
Venable?
No, maybe that sounds kind of maybe more Italian. Venable.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. I don't know.
Where is your last name from? I don't want to know. All I want to know is...
My dad gave it to me.
All about... Do you think your dad would give me a cool last name too?
Well, his dad gave it to him, so I don't know.
Family heirloom. He is an award-winning producer, engineer, podcaster, if you didn't know. He's the drummer for the band As We Ascend, as well as now a guitarist. You can add that one to your...
3 weeks in.
To your...
my repertoire of instruments.
Yes, as well as...
That I'm not really good at it.
Tons of amazing things. Oh, shut up. The guy is famous. I'm really excited to see the upcoming episode of Nashville that he's on as an engineer.
Side note, I just saw you in an episode of Nashville.
I did too. I just finally watched it.
You didn't even tell me you saw it. I asked you if you saw yourself in it, and you didn't say anything.
did. Yes.
I saw you in it. Yeah.
Episode 1.
Of season 6.
Of season 6, yep. So I'm excited to see your scene. I am curious, though. Did you play yourself, or did your character have a name?
I played me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which makes you really, I guess, even more famous, because...
I don't know that it does.
Robert Venable actually is an engineer on the show Nashville, as well as an engineer in real life.
In Nashville. Yeah.
In that... Oh, whoa. That's a paradox right there. My brain hurts.
We're in the upside down now.
So, on top of all of his gold records, Grammy nominations, and Dove Awards, the guy has an incredible talent. He actually can eat 2 pickles at the same time, hanging upside down on the monkey bars, but only at one specific playground. I can't tell you where it is. Has to do with a pending court case. But
I'm telling you, I was sweating when you were telling me about the park, because I know that people were just going to show up there and just to watch me do this, and I'd be on YouTube, and I wasn't really ready to go public with it yet. But the upside down thing's new.
Right.
I've been eating 2 pickles at a time my whole life, pretty much standing upright. And then I went to laying down, and then now recently at the park, upside down on the monkey bars.
Do you remember how many miles are you not allowed to be within school?
Within 2 states.
No, that's not true at all.
Jake Jones sitting right in front of me on the other microphone in the room, and in the other ear in your headphones, or whatever you're listening to us on. Okay, let me tell you this. I took up the guitar because I want to be Jake Jones. Because we both produce. You're also an engineer, as am I, and you're writing songs, ridiculously good songs at that. But the difference is you get to play guitar and I can't play guitar and I feel left out. So in all these songwriting sessions and productions that we're working on together as a tag team, man, you're in there rocking these riffs on the guitar and I can't do it.
So what you're saying is you want to try to cut me out of the picture so that you can just do everything yourself.
Maybe.
Knew it.
Not gonna do that to you because you can also sing, which is awesome. In the band, As We Ascend, you sing and play guitar. You used to play guitar in the nationally touring rock band We As Human, chart-topping songwriter. Dude, you do it all. But my favorite thing about you is the fact that you had a 9-year career as a snake milker.
I'm impressed that you came up with that so quickly because I know that you just came up with that.
In the middle of that sentence, it came out of my mouth right at the end. I get popped in my brain, and I'm like, I just got to say something. I don't know where I'm going to go at the end of the sentence, so that's where it went.
So snake milking is the thing that I've been into for the last 15 years.
I only thought you had a 9-year career on it. I'm so sorry.
No, 15 years, 9 years professionally.
Got you. Okay.
It sounds more difficult than it really is. A lot of people think it has to do with venom, but really it has nothing to do with venom at all. Those little snakes, they got to eat somehow. And sometimes little snake mommies, they can't feed their little snake babies.
Those baby snakes just going up to those little snake teats.
That's where I come in and have to make sure that they can get a healthy, nutritious diet.
Do you use a tool when you're milking snakes, or do you just go in with your fingers?
It's just my fingers. Anything. You can milk anything with nipples.
Oh, yeah, you can milk anything with nipples.
I have nipples, Greg. Could you milk me?
Okay, can we change subject?
So, yeah, milking snakes is a thing, but that's not what we're talking about today, Jake Jones. Today we are going to talk about some, I guess you would call them anomalies, things that are hard to explain, weird things.
Anomalous anomalies.
Things out of the ordinary that have to do with sound. And looking over the list of things we're going to cover today, there are a few I'm excited to share with you, things that I've heard about for a while and some things I learned myself during the research process.
So, Robert, I mean, before we go any further, what is sound? I know we've talked about it in our It's Weird episode, but let's
break it down just not to get too technical with it because I don't want to bore you. It's a mechanical wave of energy on a longitudinal plane that emanates from a vibration. So think like a drum head or a guitar string. Like you hit that drum head, it vibrates, or if you pluck that string, it vibrates a little bit. And the vibration of that like steel guitar string is hitting the molecules around it, which hit the molecules around that. And it's so on and so forth, on and on and on until it hits your ears and it interprets it that way and keeps going on. But as it does that, think of like a wave or a ripple in a pond when you throw a stone in, it just kind of dissipates and eventually fades into nothing.
Which, not to sound like too obvious here, but this is going to have to do with what we're coming into. When you say molecules, I mean, here on Earth, that is literally like oxygen and nitrogen and all, like all the things in our atmosphere that we breathe. And
yeah, and this does have to do with what I'm about to say.
And they vibrate and hit
the tympanic
membrane, right?
Membrane in your ear. So it vibrates as a little, I don't know, an inducer of some sort, where your brain interprets those vibrations as a certain pitch or frequency. So now, with that being said, what we're about to talk to this first anomaly is sound in space. So let's talk about here on Earth, those molecules. How many of them are there? 1.8 times 10 to the 23rd power.
Why don't you count that out real quick, starting at 1?
That's billions and trillions and blah, 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 blah.
Well, let's count. 1, 2, 3.
I'll see you in a few years. That many molecules per cubic centimeter.
Oh, goodness.
Billion, trillion, million, like 10 to the 23rd power of those in 1 cubic centimeter. So that's on Earth, in our atmosphere, how many molecules, that's how small they are. So those molecules are bouncing off each other, bounce off others and others. And that's how we hear sound, right? Let's go ahead and say sound in space, right? We've all heard all the rumors of recording alien sounds on microphones. Or like, what was that strange squeal that was picked up by the astronauts as they were on the dark side of the moon? All this kind of stuff. And if you've researched any of this and seen any interviews with astronauts and they said they've heard it, there are other ones that have said it's impossible because space is a vacuum. Just to clarify, remember that fact and figure I gave you a second ago of how many molecules are per cubic centimeter on Earth? In space, since it's a vacuum, there are literally 1 to 2 molecules per cubic centimeter.
Holy cow.
So they can't bounce off of each other to continue the sound wave. There's no way to hear it. So I was reading and saw that if for some miraculous manner, an astronaut was outside in space, floating around, and was able to take his helmet off, his mask off, and, the pressure wouldn't like crush his skull, and he had somehow a way to breathe, if that were possible. and he were to scream, you wouldn't hear it.
That kind of adds a whole new meaning to it. If a tree falls in space,
If an astronaut screams in space, would anybody hear it? No, it's impossible. And in fact, even the roar from the space engines blaring like gaseous fumes and energy and all this stuff through, like soaring through space at 23 bajillion miles per minute.
yeah, that's scientific right there.
That was exact figures. You can't hear it even a foot away.
So, sorry to interrupt, but to that very thing, I was just watching a video. They strapped cameras to the shuttle Atlantis on its final ascent into space.
Yeah.
To the solid rocket boosters, and you can watch them literally start at the launch pad, shoot all the way up, and then they detach from the fuel tank.
Right. Yeah. They fall back down to
They
Earth.
fall back.
Yeah.
But they're really, really high up when they do that, where the air and those molecules are so spread out. It's interesting because it gets incredibly quiet because these cameras have audio. And so you can watch on YouTube where it's really loud and you hear the rockets and it gets higher and starts getting quieter and quieter.
Yeah.
And then it gets way up and it goes silent. And then they start falling back to Earth. And the further down it gets, the denser the molecules get. All of a sudden you start hearing it and you start hearing it and it starts getting really loud.
That makes sense.
Till it gets, so that makes sense. I did not know that. I mean, I know that space is not a perfect vacuum.
No, yeah, there's still 2 molecules per cubic centimeter in our Milky Way galaxy. Now let's take it out to the critical density of the universe outside of our galaxy, like there's no way we're going to be there anytime in our lifetime, but that's 1/3 of a molecule per cubic meter. 1/3. So there's only one molecule floating around in every 9 feet.
Wow.
I mean, that's nothing. That's you can't exist. There's light barely exists there. So that's not going to happen.
Holy moly.
So let's talk about, okay, Ohio State University is now defunct. It's called the Big Ear Radio Telescope Observatory. It was searching for signals from aliens or any kind of foreign entity of sorts, if you will. So a volunteer named Jerry Eman noticed a signal that was extremely powerful, 30 times louder than the typical ambient noise of deep space, whatever that means. Like I said, there's no noise out there, but extremely close to about 1.4 megahertz, which is the exact frequency of hydrogen. Now, it picked up the signal and it lasted 72 seconds, which is longer than anything they've ever heard before, some kind of sound coming from space. And they did 100 or so more studies after that in the same region of sky, and they got nothing like this. So they can't replicate it. But they did record some kind of 72-second long sound at 1.4 megahertz.
Man, it must be aliens, right?
I'm sorry, 1,420 megahertz. So they're like, what is that? Aliens? Who knows what it could be? All right, so my opinion,
Maybe it's like a super awesome flaming space bird.
man, I love flaming space birds. But okay, so I've been producing music for 15 years and you've been doing it for close to a decade as well, Jake. So in my opinion, if you have a microphone on Earth or even in our atmosphere floating around on a satellite that's orbiting Earth, right? And it's really, really powerful. It turned up, very, very sensitive, the volume's turned way up. I mean, I just imagine as much as you can turn that up. Trying to pick up things from thousands of miles away.
So we're saying the mic is turned up.
Ba-dum-bum. So if you're trying to pick up something that far away, it's got to be really sensitive. And you're picking up any kind of noise. My guess, with my experience and my expertise, would say a little piece of dust landing on the capsule of this microphone would make a huge explosion sound.
Oh, it's going to sound like Godzilla's walking around in your backyard.
So for them to hear a squeal or some kind of tone, it could be the tube of the microphone making some kind of noise, any kind of grounding on the cable, any kind of outside force acting on this microphone. I mean, I doubt they're picking up sounds from that far away without anything a lot closer interfering with it.
Well, and I mean, you said literally that was the frequency of hydrogen. And 120 something hertz?
Yeah.
120 something kilohertz.
1,400 megahertz.
Megahertz.
So, I mean, who knows what it was? Dust, noisy tubes, anything, who knows? But anyway, that's the first anomaly I wanted to cover was these sounds in space. And man, there's aliens out there. There might be aliens out there, but we're not going to hear them. So, okay, that was the first one I wanted to cover. But something that you had put in the notes, Jake, that you and I have spent probably literally hours talking about and sharing with other people is one of my favorites. Check this out.
All right. So that is just a sound, right? It's just a sound that's going up.
It's freaking me out because it keeps going up.
Okay, real quick. I just want to pick up where we left off on that sound. So you heard it going up, and then you heard it going up some more, right?
I like the first clip better because the last one got a little too high for me. Personally.
Roberto.
Drake. I roll my J's.
Little did you know that was a little tricky trick.
I like tricky tricks.
Both of those sounds were exactly the same.
Don't believe us? Go back right now, hit the little rewind 15-second button on your podcast player if you're listening on iTunes or whatever you're listening to. Check it out again. It's the exact same clip twice in a row.
Yes, literally. We just played the same thing twice. What is that called, Robert?
That is a phenomenon we call the shepherd's tone.
That's right. So the shepherd's tone is it's an anomaly. And again, it's more so our brains playing a trick on us than it actually is the sound playing a trick on us.
It's like an aural illusion.
So what it is, what you literally heard, it's a sound that's going up, and the higher that sound goes up, then other octaves of that sound.
The same note, an octave lower, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Start ascending, and they start to get a little bit louder. And then as that one climbs, then it just repeats.
It
over
adds
and over.
the lower one back in again. So it's really going like 2 to 3 octaves, but as soon as we get to the top of the top octave, the bottom one kicks back in again. So it's just like a constant circle, I guess, right?
Right. Well, real quick, they do have a version of it that is just continuous. That's the same thing. And I'll let you hear that really quick. Same thing. And it just sounds like it goes up and up forever and ever. And a shepherd's tone, it could go up, it could go down. It just has the illusion of going on forever, being infinite. And that's just made using sine waves with a computer sound. It's very perfect frequencies.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You
don't need to know the technical stuff about it. But
music nerds will get it. Non-music nerds,
look it up.
It's just boring.
Yeah. I thought it was cool. I mean, a lot of people I've shown this to who aren't music nerds like you and I have heard it and like, wow, it sounds like it's just going up and up and up and up and up, Stairway to Heaven type style. But it is straight up just 2 or 3 octaves as repeated, and it sounds like it's just making me nervous. Like I hear it and I'm like anxious. I'm ready. When's the bass gonna drop?
Well, I was actually getting nervous the first time I ever heard it, waiting for it to hit those like super high, like dog whistle frequencies.
Like kind of squinting.
When's it coming? When's it coming? It just like never comes. It's like, wait, it feels like it's just continuing to go up, but you don't notice the blend there. All right, so this next one is really cool.
Okay.
If you're in a place where there are other people and you're listening to this podcast by yourself, take your headphones out and find someone to listen to this with. If there's 2 or 3 of you, perfect.
This is a friend building ice breaking exercise.
Or you'll want to,
I don't know, whatever.
choke each other out. So we all know about the blue dress, right? The big.
It was a white dress, right? The white and gold? White and gold?
It was blue. It was blue and black.
It was the white and gold dress. That I remember seeing it. It was white and gold.
No, it was blue
The
and
one on
black.
Twitter, though, I'm talking about.
Right, yeah, same one. Yeah,
The white and gold dress. Right?
No, it's the blue and black one because it was blue and black.
The one that had the photo of the white and gold dress inside
blue and
of it.
black.
Okay. Obviously, you don't know what you're talking about, but whatever.
You get my point. This is the audio version of that exact same thing. So you're about to hear a set of notes. Now, I want you to decide as you hear them, and I would be very curious to see in the comments on our social media as well as in a review what you think. So are these notes ascending or descending? Are they going up or down? Check this out.
Down. I mean,
No,
they're going down.
Up.
The one
But then the
play
because they're going.
the one we just put in right now is going down.
Yeah, it's going up.
Down.
No.
The white and gold dress is going down. Right?
Ay.
So that's called the tritone paradox, and it was actually discovered in 1986 by Diana Deutsch, and it was first reported at a meeting of the Acoustical Society of America.
So Diana Deutsch is really cool because she actually specializes in audio illusions.
I love that. I chased that rabbit down the rabbit hole on YouTube, probably for a good 4 hours, just watching videos on like acoustical and sound illusions. I think it's cool. It's fascinating.
Okay, so we've said it's the tritone paradox.
Yeah.
What are people actually hearing? Why do, to some people, it sound like it's going up and going down, right?
Let's find out.
So the cool thing about this tritone, it has to do with the interval of the notes. And I won't get all into that, but basically, then there's a high note and a low note. And your brain is going to, in a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a second, decide which note it's going to latch onto.
Right.
So when you hear those you're hearing two notes and then you're hearing two notes. And so your brain is going to latch onto one note and then it's going to latch onto another note next. And it literally is ascending or descending, depending
Which
on
one you're grabbing onto.
which one you're, but there's more to it than just that.
No way.
They found in this study that people heard all different combinations of up and down. And the thing is, a lot of people, it had to do with maybe the region of the world that they're from. They tended to always hear them going up or going down between specific intervals. The other thing too is it's also, there's some sort of genetic tie to it, because they find that if you heard the notes going up, then your mother also heard the notes going up every
What?
time, consistently.
No way. So my mom, along with our other intelligent members of the Venable clan, have heard that it goes down like it's supposed to.
Because it's definitely going up. And, but yeah, so there is no wrong answer. But it's really fun, especially if you're doing it with friends, because when you hear it, I literally, not even joking, when I heard it, I did hear every interval going up every time. I always heard it going up. Every single time.
That's so fascinating to me. This is fascinating. I like it.
And so it's really cool. And of course, those notes are generated using, again, similar to the shepherd tone, sine waves. So they're very pure sound waves. They're a single, it's called a monophonic sound. So it's two of those. So they're a perfect frequency.
Do you think that like musical background plays into how people perceive this? Like, do you think if you showed a whole bunch of band members this illusion of sorts, the tritone paradox, do you think that they'd hear it and go, most of them would say one way or another, as opposed to like the general public or like random 16-year-old they find at a high school or something?
So I don't know. Again, since I heard all of them going up, I wondered if it had to do with me being a producer and being a musician and all of those things. I have no idea. However, they did say that if you heard, for instance, in that specific example, and you can use any set of these tritone intervals, but if you heard it going up the first time, you'll hear it going up the second time, the third time. You'll always hear that going up.
Huh.
But if you take the same experiment and you go up an octave, which are the same notes, just up the next register higher, the results do not duplicate themselves. You might hear them going down.
But always in that register, like the octave higher, if I heard them going down in that octave, I'll always hear them going down in that octave. But
Correct.
if I hear them in the lower octave, I might always hear them going up, if that's what I heard originally.
Every time.
Huh.
Yep.
That must have been fun to be on like that panel of scientists who are studying this paradox. Just to like to come to that conclusion, like, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Robert, I'm going to play something for you. I want you to tell me what word you hear. Now, if you're listening to this, it is very important. This is not going to work unless you're listening. It'll work if you're listening in your car, but you definitely want to be listening with stereo or two speakers. Earphones or headphones are the best. If you're just listening on your phone or through like a one ear, you got to listen on both ears.
All right, so let me put my other headphone on. All right, both headphones are on. Hit me.
What word did you hear?
It sounded like a made-up word called, I heard Gilga. Gilga.
I heard heel down, heel down, heel down.
It was definitely Gilga. What's the right answer?
There is a list of probably 50 words that people heard when played this exact same clip. So that is actually Diana Deutsch's voice herself.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So she's kind of the leading pioneer of audio illusions. and the big researcher on it. A lot of people have used her research. So what I think is really cool about the phantom words illusion is it's this phenomenon that involves our brains and our desire to always make something out of something. In other words, so
our brain's trying to like fill in the blanks.
Exactly.
Like, it has to be something. So here's what it's going to be.
Look up in the clouds.
Okay.
Tell me what you see, right? So you every time we look, you might see a dog, or you see a face, or you might see the Mother Mary in a piece of toast.
Always.
Our brains always want to try to turn something abstract into something familiar. In fact, the ink blot test is a great example of this.
The Rorschach test, yeah.
That's why they do it. And it's what is your brain trying to turn these random abstract
So if you always see
into
blood splatter or knives or guns, then you're probably going to be a serial killer someday.
If you heard something like Gilga, it probably means that
super intelligent, right? And that the tritone paradox goes down.
Oh, that's right.
Oh,
you figured it out. So cute. If you guys want to send some snacks and maybe a little teddy bear to Robert
after nap time, I'll look at it.
So that's a lot of what that is. Your brain is trying to turn those random bits into actual words, and it'll turn it into all kinds of things.
That's interesting to me.
So they did find, much like the ink blot test, whatever mood you're in, where maybe your background, your life, your history, like it gets deep. The words you hear are directly affected by
nurture, not nature. It's like how you're brought up.
Again, it could be your mood. So apparently your mood is pretty random right now.
Gilga? Yeah, I don't know what that is. Maybe it's like a Legend of Zelda land that I haven't discovered yet. I don't know.
Got video games on the brain.
It sounds like something I'd find in a video game of some sort. Hey, you were telling me about the hum.
Oh, wait.
Go ahead.
There are actually a ton of really cool audio illusions. If you just go to Diana Deutsch's website, you can just Google Diana Deutsch, and it's spelled Deutsch. And of course, Diana, Diana. And you can go on YouTube anywhere. There's another really cool one called the speeding up drum. Sound and really cool. It sounds like the drum beats are going faster and faster, but they're not.
It's not. It's just looping.
The same.
Jake, you were telling me right before we started this about the hum, and I was looking at it a little bit, but via text message when we were talking back and forth, but I didn't really get the whole gist of it. What in the world is the hum?
Okay. I thought this was really cool. I started on a Mental Floss article about this, and at first I was kind of like, okay, whatever. This is what I don't know. And after doing just a little bit of research, my mind was pretty blown, and it's a little bit terrifying. I think I just want to kind of like try to make logical sense of it as quickly as I can so that I can sleep at night.
Let's solve this riddle so we can get to bed.
So the hum, in fact, it's so common. If you Google the hum, like it comes up. It's a pretty common phenomenon.
Well, I've heard about it, and the only thing I remember, you said you're from New Mexico, and I remember that a lot of people in New Mexico were hearing this. I remember something when I was living in Phoenix, people were talking about how New Mexico, there's this hum that exists, and a lot of people hear it.
Right.
But not all the time.
Right. Check this clip out really quick. This is really cool. And what I like about this is it's definitely it's not made up. It's not put in the editing later because this is a baseball game, and even the announcers are talking about it because they can hear it. Check this out.
First inning. That's a haunting sound, if we've ever heard one. 1 ball, no strikes. And the bunt is foul. The count is 1-1.
Now, what could that possibly be? Somebody shut the door.
It sounds supernatural.
Supernatural is a good way to put it. It does. It sounds like the wind almost howling through the door, but not. That's different.
Right. Kind of terrifying. I mean, I can't imagine so those are announcers that are up in an announcer's booth and they could hear it.
Right. So that was from a Major League Baseball game here in the States of the Detroit Tigers versus the Tampa Bay Devil Rays. And that apparently happened in the middle of the game, right while some batter was up there getting ready to swing the bat at a ball, and everybody heard that, and it was kind of weird.
So documented incidents of this hum they really started picking up in the last 50 years or so. In most cases, there's been reports of like an ongoing, non-ending, and very troubling low-frequency humming noise that can only be heard by a certain portion of the population, which I think is interesting. Only certain people can hear it, but there we have, obviously, camera equipment picking it up, and both of the announcers could hear it.
Right? Yeah, and a lot of the crowd members, obviously, there's like a weird ooh over the crowd.
So they really aren't sure when it started, but it's definitely been very well documented since the 1970s. And since then, cases have popped up all over the world, from Canada down to Taos, New Mexico.
Oh, that's what I thought. That's what I heard.
All the way over into Bristol, England.
All over, like Scotland and New Zealand, looking over the notes here, like everywhere, all over the world.
Right. So in most instances, the affected group only makes up around 2% of the population, which is, not very many people.
Nope.
2 in 100 people. So for those people, though, like, it's completely inescapable.
So it's like it's just bugging the crap out of you.
Oh, yeah. And it's impossible to track. They have no idea where it's from. But everyone who has reported it has said that they've never heard that sound before. And it's usually heard indoors and becomes louder at night, which I think is really interesting. And there's other videos of this hum from people like in their house, like they hear it. It's driving them nuts. They pick their phone up. They look out the window to see what's coming or what's happening. It just doesn't go away.
I wonder, like, that 2% of people, if it matters, like what is discerning if you can hear it or not? Does it matter, like, because only the young people can hear it because they have better hearing? Or is it one of those things like, is it locational? Like the 2% of people because they all live in this one town in New Mexico? What is that? What determines if you can hear it or not?
Well, my initial thought was, it's probably like people in big cities because the wind blowing through the big buildings or something.
Speaking of which, I found some stuff on the World Trade Center in New York City. We're going to get to that in a minute. Because you said big city. I think you're going to like that one. Anyway, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was just kind of what I thought. Or like, baseball stadium. Maybe it's the wind blowing over the baseball stadium or something. I don't know.
Right. Like blowing over like a bottle, like an empty Coke bottle.
False.
No.
Most of the cases of this hum are reported in rural or suburban areas, so not in the big city. And as far as young people being able to hear it because they have a wider frequency range of hearing, which is true. We discussed that in another podcast.
We did.
That's false as well. Most of the reports come from individuals between 55 and 70 years old.
Wow. I remember when I was 55.
Back when they were
but you said this started 50 years ago, so that would have been before that.
Okay, so scientists, like the science community, has actually started investigating this, and they have been sometimes able to attribute it to like industrial equipment emanating certain frequencies. For the most part, however, the sound has left the world completely puzzled. And it's they say only 2% of the population can hear it, but that's still 2% of 7 billion is a lot of people. And all of those people can hear it. So it's become fairly common, especially among that community. And the list of other possible culprits for this sound is incredibly long because of our wireless communications and as technology increases.
Right.
Of course, there's electromagnetic radiation that's coming from the sun that could possibly be causing it.
Tectonic plates are moving under the Earth's surface, like in the crust. What if that's happening?
Seriously, it could be anything. Because it comes and goes like it does, and because the cause may vary from case to case, the phenomenon still baffles researchers. And at this point, only a few things are clear. The hum is real and likely a byproduct of 21st century living.
Throwing this out there, just stay with me here for a second. What if this has something to do with like radio waves, or cell phone waves or something that, in San Francisco, the Golden Gate Bridge, and they said or any bridge that's suspended, if the traffic across it are at the same exact speed and it starts magnifying that wave of the vibrations, and all of a sudden the bridge starts wobbling because all the cars are bouncing at the exact same pace and just gets worse and worse and worse. And all of a sudden, before you know it, the bridge is swinging a good 10 feet in either direction. What if these inaudible waves, cell phone waves, radiation, radio waves or whatever, all of a sudden start getting right in sync? Like
compounding.
Yeah, and just magnifying, getting in on top of each other, one on top of each other, one on top of another. And all of a sudden it just starts making an audible frequency.
I've wondered that very thing because radio waves, cell phone waves, light waves, all of those waves are waves, like sound is a wave.
They're all going up and down. Yeah.
They're also all radiation. They're electromagnetic radiation, which is kind of scary, but that we have those things passing through our brains all the time as we talk on the phone or play on Facebook.
Don't remind me.
But yeah, it's I don't know. I think it's possible, and it's a really interesting thing to research.
I think if you have some spare time, take a look on the interwebs and see what you can find. Speaking of interwebs, the other day when I was researching stuff for this podcast, I came across this phenomenon about the cosmonaut.
From Mother Russia.
From Mother Russia. Yes. So, okay. The Soviet Union, which is, the Russian Federation, whatever, they'll never acknowledge that this happened, either because it didn't and the audio is a hoax, or because it would have made them look bad. And anything that had to do with like the Russian Federation or the Soviet Union failing, it wasn't legal for them to publicize because they cannot show fault, right? Okay. So these two brothers, Achille and Giovanni, I'm going to butcher their last name, it's hyphenated, it's Giudica Cordiglia? I don't know. We're just going to call them Achille and Giovanni for right now.
Good enough for government work.
So these brothers, who are actually Italian, really liked radios, right? They were really into technology and radios at the time, and this was in the late 50s. So they found this World War II German bunker in the city of Turin and turned it into like their own private listening station. They started like importing and creating this radio, shortwave radio station and trying to listen to things. Okay, right? They unintentionally, not on purpose, built a radio that could pick up Soviet transmissions from Sputnik.
What?
Okay, so they're picking things up from the Soviet satellite and U.S. transmissions from Explorer 1. And they started to record everything, right? So they hit record, and they're just keeping tabs on all of this stuff.
I've heard about this. This is sounding familiar now.
Okay, so that was in the late 50s. Fast forward to November 28th of 1960. They recorded this. Take a listen. Unless you speak Russian, you have no idea what that was. But so they think that it's a female astronaut or cosmonaut from Russia. And if you don't speak Russian, here's a rough translation of it. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing because it obviously goes on for a while. But it says 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Come in, come in, come in. Listen, listen. Come in, come in, come in. Talk to me, talk to me. I am hot. I am hot. What? 45, 50. Yes, yes, yes. Breathing, breathing oxygen, oxygen. I'm hot. Isn't this dangerous? Anyway, it goes on for a while and saying stuff a lot like that. And
that gave me chill bumps. That's creepy.
I know. So like this is in 1960 and they're recording this stuff. Again, we know from space you can't have that, but they recorded this sound. Is it a hoax? I don't know.
I was just going to ask you, what were you doing November 28th, 1960?
When I heard this come across my radio from my bunker I had set up, just kidding. 1960, I was hanging out in drive-ins.
With the other geriatric community.
So we playing bingo. And so we don't know if this is a hoax. We don't know what this is. It's a recorded audio piece that we have, obviously still today. You just heard it. What is it? Where did it come from? Who said it? Was it fake? Did these brothers come up with this thing for publicity? I don't know. Because Achille died just a few years ago in 2015. But Giovanni's still out there. So if you know Giovanni, ask him, like, look, man, here's $20. What really happened?
I'm going to text him.
Find his number. He's probably pretty old though at this point, but
he's my bro. We're close.
Oh, cool, man. How do you say
you and him friends when you were kids?
Oh, man. Okay. So who knows? I don't know. I don't know where it came from. It's one of those like weird things that maybe we'll never know, but it's out there.
So much like we did absolutely for sure land on the moon, I tend to believe that this is probably true. But some of my conspiracy theory friends, Robert,
who shall not be named Robert,
might tend to believe that this is probably a hoax. However, I at the time, I don't think that the Russian government would have known that these guys were listening. So it's not like they were putting on a show for a couple of guys in a bunker.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, why would they make it up? Just for publicity? But obviously, I mean, if this lady were crying out for help, this cosmonaut female was crying out for help, like re-entering the atmosphere or whatever.
Goodness gracious.
Russia would never admit it. The Soviet Union would never admit it because it was against the law to admit failure. I don't know.
It's both terrifying and really sad if someone was hurt or even lost their life in an experiment that anyone covered up.
And then they just kept it a secret. Man.
I want to talk about something else that's kind of terrifying. And this is going to be a little on the lines of the hum as well, but a separate phenomenon. And it's called skyquakes.
I've heard of skyquakes.
Maybe you've heard a skyquake.
I don't know that I've heard one, but I've heard of them.
I have not heard one. However, a skyquake, so they're basically just unexplained sonic booms that are heard around the world and have definitely been documented and heard for the last 200 years for certain, as far as we know. And there are people, I mean, there's the science community and just the community in general, globally has speculated that it could be anything from meteors re-entering the atmosphere to cannons in the, far away.
I heard that it was actually like underwater caves collapsing. That's what like my research found, that there were caves underwater that were just collapsing. That was creating this huge boom sound, like the sub-frequency.
And again, I mean, that it could be that. That would make sense why it's always around water.
Right.
At first I looked up a couple of clips of it and it's like rain showers. Well, it's like, duh, it's probably lightning.
It's called thunder.
But I'm going to play a clip for you really quick and you can find this on YouTube. I don't know what it is. My thought initially was, oh, well, it could be like construction equipment. Maybe kind of sounds like Godzilla in the background. But if it's been going on for 200 years,
right.
We didn't have big cranes and heavy machinery back then. But check this out.
Roll that beautiful bean footage.
Yeah, that's right, AJ Abby. We'll take a look at this map. This is where residents say they are hearing the loud booms, and you can see right across this map, you can see North Florida and South Georgia. Almost all the counties in our coverage area are covered. Now take a look at some of what our viewers posted on Facebook. Kelly writes, it sounded like a loud truck rumbling, went outside and nothing. Also, Precious B writes, my home shook. I thought it was an earthquake. Yet another viewer also telling us that she says, I have heard and felt several times over the last few days, dogs go crazy and the windows rattle. It felt like the whole house was shaking. Now, we did reach out to this, as so many of you were talking about this, we decided to go in search of what may have caused the boom. We reached out to Tyndall Air Force Base near Panama City. Officials told us 4 of their aircraft were flying Tuesday evening during that time, but they also said there was no indication of any sonic boom that would be noticeable in the area.
Sounds like every thunderstorm I've ever heard. I don't know what you're talking about.
Where do you live?
I live on top of a skyscraper where Godzilla frequents.
Apparently.
Man, that's weird.
Yeah, it's really weird. And I got chill bumps watching this video clip.
That's okay. So that's weird. But have you heard of the bloop?
Okay, so I have heard of the bloop, and the first time I heard it, I literally just dismissed it as, oh, this is stupid. It's just a bubble. Like, it's probably like methane gas coming up out of the Earth's crust or something underwater.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Listen to it. Yeah, I mean, I can see where you say it sounds like like what it's called, the bloop. It goes bloop.
Until you told me what you're about to say.
Yeah, that's actually a sound clip that's sped up 16 times. The original actual sound clip is over a minute long. So that's sped up just so we didn't have to sit here for a minute and listen to it. That whole thing would have taken a whole minute to go. But that was just, that was sped up literally 16 times the original time.
I'm going to share the audio spectrum clips of these. I'll put together a little visual for our Instagram and Facebook so that you can kind of see what these look like on a spectrometer. But it's really interesting. It's definitely not just like you can see it. You can literally see the sound on these.
Right. And like these are originally thought to be maybe like a blue whale or some kind of whale underwater. I don't know. But it's not. It's not. Okay, let's get into this for a second. It was an ultra-low frequency underwater sound detected by the United States National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which we're going to call NOAA. It's NOAA.
Right. If you've never heard of NOAA, just turn on the Weather Channel.
Yeah, NOAA. And that was from 1997, that clip we just heard. Okay. It was detected several times by the Equatorial Pacific Ocean Autonomous Hydrophone Array, which is this huge...
Say that 10 times fast.
I can't say. I'm lucky I said it that one time. And what it is, it's like a chain of underwater listening posts located around the world in places such as the Atlantic Ocean, near Greenland and Iceland, and in the United Kingdom. It's this huge array of underwater microphones, essentially.
Pause that really quick. I just want to go back to our sound effects episode. If you haven't heard it, Go back and listen to it. It's called Foley Cow. However, I did catch here in the notes that this is done with an array of hydrophones, which our handsome guest, Greg Barbanel, was on.
That was one of my favorite episodes, by the way. Like, I still think about it.
I do too. In fact, it just snowed here, and I was walking through the snow. And then the very next day, I was making cornstarch Play-Doh with my girls and was taking the cornstarch.
Don't give away too much.
All right, listen to it. You'll know exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he said that sometimes to get the underwater sound effects, they might use hydrophones. However, he found that what works much better instead of a hydrophone is to take a lavalier mic or a lapel mic
and put it in a prophylactic.
Yes, a Trojan.
A Trojan prophylactic.
And drop it underwater. So maybe they might get a better clue of what the bloop is if they just took a condom and wrapped it around a pastor's microphone and dropped it in the middle of the ocean.
Does this smell like latex to you? So they had all this whole array of hydrophones, right? And they kind of roughly triangulated it based off of how loud it was and which microphone or hydrophone to a remote spot in the South Pacific Ocean west of the southern tip of South America. So if you ever find yourself there, just try to find out what the bloop is. But basically, it, quote, rises rapidly in frequency over about 1 minute and was of sufficient amplitude to be heard on multiple sensors.
Amplitude meaning volume.
Yeah, at a range of over 5,000 kilometers, which is a little over 3,000 miles, 3,100 miles.
Whoa. Okay, so something I thought it was really cool about it, because again, you know, when I first heard it, I was like, oh, well, it's bubbles. But then, well, that wouldn't take a minute. Yeah. It's like, okay, well, it could easily be, you know, there's tons of stuff in the ocean that we put in there.
Right. And right? They declared that it was not man-made. So it was not a submarine or a bomb. And it was not geological sound like the volcanoes or earthquakes that they've recorded over hundreds of years.
Or the earth farting.
Yeah, it's none of that. But it sounds kind of like an animal sound, like the blue whale, which is the loudest recorded animal. But it's actually several times louder than that.
Wow.
So the NOAA Vince program has attributed the bloop to a large ice quake. But who really knows?
I know.
We don't know.
No, I know.
You were there?
I know what it is.
Well, tell me.
It's a conspiracy. So on our flat Earth that we can't leave, so we definitely haven't been to the moon.
Right, of course.
It is aliens underwater.
Shooting BBs at the flat Earth from the other side? From the upside down?
And it sounds like...
That takes a whole minute to get all the way up. It's weird. I mean, you heard the sound. I don't know what it is. Remember, that was sped up 16 times the original time. I don't know.
That is just crazy.
That's weird. I've heard a lot of sounds, but something that takes that long to make that much of a frequency sweep, I don't know.
I think it's cool. I think it's cool that, as smart as we are, as far as our technology has come, that there are still very common occurrences on this earth that we just have no idea what they are.
Okay. So we've talked about these that are like in the ocean and in other parts of the country and even New Mexico where none of us live.
I definitely grew up in New Mexico, but yes, parts of the world that are not familiar and are remote and nobody wants to live there, like New Mexico. I'm just kidding. Actually, I'm going to scratch that. I love New Mexico.
I alluded to this at the beginning of the podcast, and it's time to talk about it. Listen to this real quick. Creepy, kind of a weird sound. But that's actually...
what in the world is that?
That's in New York City. And they say that it originates from the World Trade Center.
You're kidding?
No.
Like the new one or the old one?
The new one. So people in Lower Manhattan often report hearing like this eerie tonal sound like we just heard coming from the World Trade Center in New York City. So several YouTube videos have surfaced of firsthand recordings of the sound. And one person claims the sound was so loud it actually woke him up at 3 a.m. And this is what he says. I quote, "I live a couple of blocks from the tower and first heard this very eerie sound during Hurricane Sandy last year. I've heard it only once afterwards, sometime last winter. I assumed once the building's framework and windows went in, the airflow would be redirected because they thought like maybe it was just hitting the beams from the construction and it was like this whistling sound, whatever. But then at 3:15 in the morning, Wednesday morning, I woke to the sound. It was slightly different in timbre, with 2 tones this time, 2 of them. I couldn't be sure what it was at first, but after a moment, I realized it was the Trade Center. outside it was raining, but the trees were calm, so it wasn't windy.
Okay. Because my first thought was definitely wind.
Just wind blowing. I can only imagine at that height the weather is different. I'm sure all of downtown hears this. It's unmistakable and very chilling. I had to get up and record it. So that's what we just heard. And he was blocks away from the World Trade Center at the time. I don't know what it is.
What do you think it is?
I'd have no idea. So at first I
Speculate.
thought it's the wind blowing through the tower, like while it was under construction. Because that's when a lot of those YouTube videos surfaced, was maybe hitting these beams, again, like we said earlier, blowing over a bottle, like a soda pop bottle or whatever, and hearing that, ooh, whatever, that's what it was. And like maybe just kind of reflecting off and the harmonics of it joining together. I don't know. But now that it's finished and it's still making the sound, I have no idea.
So give me 2 seconds.
Take it.
2 seconds.
Take both of the seconds.
I'm going to go on a tangent here.
Please do.
Okay. So I am really big into quantum physics and quantum mechanics.
I know.
And the big thing there is they're trying to find something called the unifying theory. So we all know Albert Einstein's E equals MC square. That's called the theory of general relativity. And it involves how gravity and planets and all of that stuff, the solar system and the universe work. Big bodies, big things. And then quantum mechanics deals with how small things like atoms and molecules and all of those things work.
Sure.
The problem is those two sciences, the math of those two sciences don't work together. You can't take the principles of how atoms and molecules work, the things we know about atoms and molecules.
Right.
You can't scale them up and suddenly they work with how the Earth rotates around the sun.
So we can't apply the things from the small things to the big things.
Exactly.
Okay.
So science is on a large quest to find what they call the unifying theory, which is the theory of how the small things work that works with the theory of how big things work.
What ties them all together?
Right, because the theory of general relativity is definitely moving more and more every day into a fact and less of a theory.
Jake, this is so sciencey.
I know, I'm sorry. I told you 2 seconds, 2 minutes. Give me 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay, great.
So
2 hours later.
2 hours later.
So again, with the Big Bang, now I personally am a creationist. I believe that the universe was created. I personally believe that God in heaven created the universe. However,
as do I.
I don't think that necessarily rules out the Big Bang.
Maybe God said, let there be a Big Bang.
May let there be light and Big Bang.
Kaboom.
However, the things we have theorized about the quantum level work in the very beginning of Big Bang, and the things we have theorized about general relativity work after a certain amount of time in the Big Bang. But there's a chunk of time in there where obviously it transitions from one to the other and they can't figure out what it is. So Big Bang, no Big Bang, whether it all, came about at the same time, there's definitely is two different sciences that don't work together. They're trying to figure out how to make it work together.
Okay.
That being said,
go ahead.
So far, one of the most widely acclaimed theories is called string theory. Now, before you turn this podcast off, I'm not going to get into what string theory is. Although it is really fascinating. Within string theory, to make it work, there has to be 11 dimensions. That means 11 versions of everything. Not literally, but...
I wonder why 11?
Not necessarily, I should say. But yes, 11 dimensions within the math to make that math work.
Okay.
All that being said, whether you believe in God or don't believe in God, if you do believe in God, I think we kind of believe in somewhat of another dimension, right? Spirits and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Even if you don't believe in that and you're just a science guy, it's like, okay, well, there could be parallel dimensions, places that things that are happening around us that we can't see because they're happening in a dimension that we don't live in.
Right.
We live in 3 dimensions, but you can find something called a tesseract, which is like a 4th dimensional cube.
Right.
And so I think it is possible, not probable, but possible that some of these anomalies may be
leaking in,
or not. It's not necessarily that I think it is, but what if it is some of these other dimensions kind of bleeding into the dimension that we live in?
I like to entertain that idea. I think that's kind of cool.
I would say as long as science can't explain what these things are, then there's no reason to believe that it's not.
Right. Let's leave that in the possibility realm. So up until now, we've talked about a lot of things that might be attributed to things that happen in nature. This one's going to be a little different. This is called the Colossi of Memnon sounds, also called the vocal Memnon. I can't say that 10 times. Don't even ask me to, Jake.
Sounds very Egyptian.
It actually is exactly Egyptian. So let's define what this is first. Let's talk about what the Colossi of Memnon is. They are two massive statues made of stone of the pharaoh Amenhotep III for the past 3,400 years since 1350 BC. They have stood west of the River Nile from the modern city of Luxor. Okay.
That is just crazy cool.
So just start thinking of these two, in the desert, these two huge monuments made of stone. Okay. That's all you have to think about in your brain hole right now. So in 27 BC, a large earthquake shattered the northern Colossus, so the northern statue, basically crumbling it from the waist up and splitting/cracking the bottom half of it. So it was all kind of in pieces. The top half felt pretty much off, and the bottom half was kind of split into a few different pieces, but still kind of upright. Okay, so I've seen pictures of this, and you can look them up too. Anyway, so the lower half of the statue has been rumored to sing on various occasions, and not sing like a song, but make these melodic tones. And a lot of tourists over the last couple hundred years have gone there, and it's always within, they've heard these sounds, and it's always within an hour or two of sunrise, usually right at dawn, and most of the time in February or March. Now, they say the February or March thing might be because that's when tourist season is in Egypt. I don't know. So that's when most of the people are there, and that's why they report it. But they hear it right around an hour or two of sunrise, usually right at dawn. And it sounds like, and it's been compared to, quote, the string of a lyre breaking, which is a stringed instrument, so the string breaking off, but also described as the striking of a brass instrument or whistling. And it's just tonal. It's got this melody it does.
It makes me wonder, could this be tied into the hum, and could the hum be some sort of weather phenomenon? Or, it's a big statue, right? So it's a big obstructor of wind. It's a big obstruction.
Right.
Could it be wind passing over?
But let me tell you this.
Okay.
So it hasn't been heard anytime recently because they said maybe it has to do with the top half being partially reconstructed, which made it taller again. So they made it back up even taller than it was by putting the pieces back together the best they could. And so wouldn't that make it even louder if it was the wind blowing around it? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Or unless it's maybe the specific shape of it.
So what they've attributed the sound to is maybe the rising temperatures, the sun coming up, and the evaporation of dew inside the porous rock.
Oh, wow. So the air passing through the tiny little pores all at once.
And maybe just think of the dew every night that comes into these statue pores and then starts evaporating as the sun comes up, somehow creating some kind of tone or resonance inside the stone. I don't know.
Wow.
But anyways, similar sounds and things a lot like these have also been heard from other Egyptian monuments. I think it'd be cool to travel to Egypt and see these statues and hear this weird melody in the morning. Just imagine how magical that would be. Even if, you can't explain it or not, whatever it is, but sitting there watching these two giant statues and then hearing these tones come from it, just accept it. Take it for what it is and remember it. I don't know.
Yeah, there's something so fascinating, and as long as I can remember, to me, about Egypt, ancient Egypt. And, I think that their architecture is mesmerizing as far as their, a lot of their kind of religious beliefs and those things. Really cool.
Especially the way that they handle and treat their dead or their leaders, like the pharaohs, and mummification and what they were buried with, and pets and jewels and what they found valuable as opposed to what we do. It's interesting to me too.
Right. And very, kind of, I guess the word would be majestic. And I also think it's cool, if you look through the Bible, it talks about things that very much parallel with what we know in history about Egypt, and kind of what a prominent role Egypt has played throughout the world. And also knowing that regardless of what you believe, it is all but proven that humanity came from the Fertile Crest. It came from the top of Africa near Egypt, and so that is definitely one of the oldest civilizations in the world.
And it's documented in hieroglyph and other written documents that we still have. We can still prove, at least back to that point, which I think is cool.
So that is definitely some really cool anomalies in sound, really interesting. Some of it may be more nerdy than others, but all of it for me, I just thought was super rad.
And there were a lot more that we didn't talk about because a lot of them are very similar. There's like the rising tone, which is the same as the bloop kind of. And there's the dropping tone, which is kind of the opposite of the bloop, all attributed to like icebergs moving. And some aren't really sure what they are, but they just kind of chalk it up to icebergs moving. But a lot of the very similar, the one I think called Jasmine or something like that. I can't remember. But the very, very similar ones to one we talked about. We tried to give you a little variety of anomalies in the sound spectrum. I thought was cool.
Well, and the fact that they are frequent enough and strange enough that there are articles about them. It's like no one really knows what they are. I mean, when you really stop and think that we live in 2018 and we can know almost anything we want to know,
right?
In the blink of an eye.
Few clickety clicks,
and there are still things, especially with sound, that we have no idea what they are or why.
It's just weird to me that it's been that many years and we can't explain things.
Yeah,
I mean, we know what causes sound, we know what sound is, we know what affects sound, but we still can't explain some of these anomalies. And some of the explanations we have kind of sound kind of cheap to me. I don't know.
Well, this sound that has come out of our mouth holes through microphones and a very tangled web and then into your ears is brought to you by the lovely peeps at Real Sound. Thank you. Huge shout out to Real Sound for editing this podcast,
producing and mixing it for us. Thank you for that. This podcast was researched by yours truly, Robert Venable and Jake Jones. We did all the research ourselves because we are nerds.
And we have Google.
And we have Google and Bing. I don't know. Both of you out there that are using Bing. I don't use Bing. I've never used Bing.
It seems like something that maybe someone with like Linux OS.
Like maybe only the Yahoo employees use it because they're forced to by contract. I don't know.
Internet Explorer.
Wait. Is that still a thing?
Oh, yeah.
People still use Explorer.
Windows users? I don't know. I haven't used a Windows in years, but
I haven't either. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Twice in one podcast.
All the Seinfelds.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
I've been a Mac guy literally since 2001.
But I digress. Mac is better than Windows. We all know it. Unless you're a Windows user, then Windows is better.
Agree with you on that, even though the tone of the tritone paradox is going down. Fine.
Definitely going up.
Down.
Thank you so much. Tune in next week for an amazing episode that we have. We also have some really cool guests coming up. You're not going to want to miss that.
Do you guys like when we have guests on our podcast? Let us know. At Twitter or Instagram at Turned Up Podcast.
And of course, Facebook.com/Turned Up Podcast. Hit us up. Let us know what you think of our podcast. We're going to be posting this week all kinds of cool photos and examples, videos of these really strange and unique phenomenon that we've been talking about.
Yeah, we're definitely going to post some things that we're not talking about on the podcast on our social media sites, so check those out.
As always, thank you so much. You keep this podcast alive. Thank you for making us the #1 music podcast on iTunes.
Rumor has it, we haven't talked about this yet, that Jake, you and I are going to be on another podcast soon. We're not going to tell you, we're not going to spill the beans just yet until after it's out so we can tell you to go listen to it.
I'm excited about it.
But this is the first that we've been approached by a lot of other podcasts asking us to kind of shout out or be a part of their podcast, or other people who want to be on our podcast. But this is the first time we're going to reach out and actually do it. We're going to go out and hang out with some other friends in Nashville and make new friends. And
that's right. And we're also in talks with a big-time producer who would like to have us on their podcast as well. So there's two.
Lots of things. All the things are happening. What do we do next? I don't know. I do know. You don't know. You're going to find out when you tune in next Monday when we put out another episode of Turned Up Podcast.
One last huge thank you to our studio guest.
Oh, yes. We have an in-house guest this evening.
Mr. Andrew Buckley, a good friend of mine, an expert bowler. I just went bowling with this guy a couple of nights ago. Not only did he catch the attention of everyone in the bowling alley because he was hitting strike after strike. I think his worst game was like a 266.
That's so horrible.
Horrible. And if you don't know anything about bowling, 300 is the highest you can get. And if I broke 100, I was having a good game. And that's most people who bowl, by the way.
Dude, Andrew, thanks for being here, man. I know that you're not mic'd up, but Thanks for being here. Hey, if you find yourself in the Nashville area and want to come hang out with Jake and I on the Turned Up podcast and just sit in on an episode, let us know.
Hit us up. We'd love to have you as a guest.
Seriously. But until next time, this is Nashville signing out.
Peace.